Welcome back to another episode of Sacred Wild Man. My name is Roy, and today I'd like to cover the topic of men who avoid conflict with their woman. So if you're a man who avoids confrontation and conflict with your woman, then you will either get really good at hiding or lying. And so what I would like to guide you through in this video is just a conversation about how men have come to being afraid of addressing conflict and confronting their woman, the consequences of not doing that, and then ways that you can begin flexing this muscle with your woman or just women in your life. So, origin story. How did men get to this point of being afraid to address conflict with their woman? One is their family of origin. This could be with their mother or father, both. With my clients and also my own personal experience growing up, a lot of it came from relationship to the mother. So for me, it was a mother who was very critical. It was a mother who was very demanding in her own expectations to be met. And this is not unique to me. There are other boys and men who had the same experience, such as my clients. What this conditions in us is this sense of, well, I don't want to be a bad boy because mommy will be upset. If mommy is upset, she might shame me. She might guilt me. And I don't like the feeling of that. And oftentimes, if mothers don't have a present husband, the father is not there, there is no containment from him, then she has to bear that burden herself. And it's a hard burden to bear. So of course, her emotions are naturally going to spill over. And oftentimes that spills onto the closest masculine figure if the father's not there, which is then her son. So she can have all these expectations. She could have this demand that he behave in this way so mommy doesn't have to be angry. Can't you see how upset you're making mommy? Do you like this? No, you don't. So stop it. So this conditions men as young boys to behave well, to not upset mommy, so then they can be called a good boy. This often leads to then a people-pleasing dynamic or persona that's put out into the world. You can think of the nice guy syndrome, the men who are afraid to ask for what they want, always giving, and harboring a lot of resentment, but there's that fear of, okay, well, I can't bring this out because this would upset women, this would upset mom. So let's just swallow this, keep it down. And from there, they lead those lives that are very passive and nice. And so, of course, there's this terror of addressing any sort of conflict or confrontation then with a woman, with their own girlfriends or wives. Another origin story of how this came to being is just an extension of that. So from this mother complex to then now modern day feminism, which has evolved into a pretty distorted creature where it just seems to be about bashing men. Misandry, just take free shots all the time. It's okay. Masculinity is toxic. Men are toxic. Don't need man. Don't need no man. We can do it better. So it creates the sense that, right, if you're a man, you might as well just shut up. You're not needed. You're not useful. Just follow what we say, right? We're taking over now as empowered women. You guys just sit down, shut up. It's our turn. And a lot of men who have good hearts willingly do this because whether it's the example of their own fathers or men they've seen in their lives, their deepest fear is to become someone like that, who didn't treat women well, or who had anger problems and all these other things. So they think, all right, the solution is then to be a nice guy, to be a good guy. And what does it mean to be good? It means to behave well and earn the approval of women. So naturally, conflict avoidance is there. A fear of confrontation is there. Because how could you possibly challenge women, your own mother? So those are two big areas where I see responsible for how men have become afraid to address conflict and confrontation with their woman. Now on to the consequences of this. If we're talking just about in the relationship, the context of a romantic relationship, girlfriend, wife, what happens here is these men actually start to destroy their relationship by virtue of not addressing conflict. Because the thing here is conflict and confrontation are a natural part of relationships. It's just going to come up. If you spend all that time with someone, you're going to run into snags where you guys butt heads. And that's okay. It's how you get through them and address them, not avoiding them. But if all you're doing is avoiding, your only options are to get really good at lying or hiding. You lie by omission. You hide somewhere in the corner of your house, doing certain things that you don't want her to know, hanging out with friends that, I can't let her know about this. I can't let her know about, maybe it's a porn addiction, or you can't let her know about, you're afraid to actually go after the things you want in life, or you're afraid to let her know about you don't have any purpose, whatever it is. You're afraid to let her know about things you can't do around the house. Maybe you're scared to let her know that you actually don't know how to fix, a broken light bulb, or whatever these things are. There's just this avoidance, hiding, and lying that happens. And rightfully, women will get upset, right? Because you aren't leading in your own life, and you also aren't leading in the relationship if all you're doing is lying or hiding. Avoidance is not leadership. And so naturally, she's going to bring that up. And that's actually a good thing, because if she didn't care, she would be completely indifferent. She wouldn't bother bringing it to you. She would just leave, or she'd just start cheating and then show up to you with a nice smiling face while doing something behind your back. The fact that she's letting you know that she's upset is the fact that she cares. But when you avoid this, when you do not lead the relationship and being able to address conflict and confrontation, she does not sense that you are a firm and sturdy man. She thinks, I have to carry the burden of everything and the emotional labor of this relationship as well. This eventually destroys the relationship because she loses attraction to you. She loses trust. There's no more polarity, chemistry, or relating in the relationship because it does not feel safe to her. And safety is so important to women, not just physical safety, but emotional safety. And the image I want to offer you for emotional safety is a painting. Painting has a frame on the borders, and then the centerpiece is the painting itself. Women and the feminine are the centerpiece, the painting, and men and the masculine are the frame, the borders. If there is no frame or border to support the feminine, then the painting just leaks out everywhere into chaos. Part of the feminine principle is chaos. So she senses that you are afraid and avoidant of conflict and confrontation. Then she doesn't trust you anymore. And no woman wants to be with a man that she cannot trust. Because who's going to lead? Who's going to have the difficult conversations? You, as a man, ought to be able to lead those things so that she can trust in your leadership and surrender and relax and actually flow in her feminine, because she can then trust that you know how to dance with that. So oftentimes when marriages and relationships fail, it's because the man is afraid to put his foot down. He's afraid to address conflict. He's afraid to confront her when she is out of line. Then what happens to these men? Heartache. Grief, deep, heart-wrenching grief. And then for the next relationship, if he does not develop self-awareness or address what happened in the previous relationship, he's going to come into the new relationship with a huge amount of projection, just tossing this out on this new woman. He has elevated her to a pedestal to say, she is the woman whom I will not fail. I will not make the same mistake like before. And what does not making the same mistake mean to him? I better behave even better. Be even nicer. Make sure she has no reason to ever be disappointed or upset with me. So he's trying hard in the very thing that led to that relationship falling apart. And so when you're doing the same thing, expecting a different result, as they have said, that's a definition of insanity. So if he does not have awareness of this, he's going to keep doing the same thing. And these are some of the main consequences of not learning to address conflict and confrontation. So now on to, how do you address conflict? Because you're probably wondering as a man, well, if this is me, you're relating to what I'm saying, then the next question is, so how do I change this? What should I be doing? 2 examples of addressing conflict, confrontation. One way is the firm, somewhat stern, daddy energy type way. And this is important because if you haven't known already, there's plenty of kinks where women talk about wanting to call their man daddy. And there's a reason for that. It's a turn on. The daddy energy is the one who handles things. So be the man who handles conflict. So if it's an argument, something didn't get done around the house, or there's some big decision, or maybe she's just upset at you because she doesn't feel you emotionally present. But she delivers it to you in a way in which doesn't feel respectful. Maybe she's calling you names. She's shouting and yelling really loudly. In that moment, instead of, oh, I'm so sorry. You're right, baby. I apologize. This will never happen again. I'm going to make it better. That actually doesn't feel good. What you can do instead is, babe, I see and hear that you're upset with me. And you probably have good reason to be. I want to understand. I want to have this conversation because I see this is important for you. However, I'm not going to just stand here if all you're doing is calling me names and yelling at me. We're not going to have this conversation like this. So, if you want to keep yelling, calling me names, I'm not going to be here for this. I'm happy to take 15 minutes. We both take 15 minutes apart. Then we come back. We have the conversation when we're both more level-headed and more in our center. Just by doing that, you set the frame, you set the container, you set the borders of that painting. She knows that there's something to push against now. There's a firmness, and that creates trust. And it'll also be nice within her nervous system just to feel your erectness, feel your spine there, not shrinking away, but firm, centered, and grounded. And then you can have a productive conversation after that. Another way to address conflict, this could be when she gives, let's say, the silent treatment, ignores you. You know she's upset. She knows she's upset. She's not saying anything. And you previously, as the nice guy or the guy who was afraid to address conflict, you might just be thinking, well, if she's not saying anything, there's no problem. So I'm not going to bring it up. It's better for you to bring it up. Once again, you're leading. You're providing the container and the frame. So if you see her doing that, you feel her doing that, you can playfully confront her. Right? Bring a chair in front of her, flip it backwards and sit on it, leaning over the chair, smiling at her, say, babe, I know you're upset. Don't lie. You're obviously upset. And I'm not going to just sit here and let you play silent treatment on me. We're going to work this out, even if we have to fight. So let's have a great fight. What is going on? And that creates a space of invitation for her to share. Now, she does not share. Whether it's in the previous example or this current example, she's just not amenable to any of these things. Then that's a better time to walk away, because there's no response from her to meet you halfway. And then that can lead to a further question of, if that's a repeating pattern, perhaps this isn't the best relationship to be in because you guys aren't in alignment. And lastly, a fun tip for addressing conflict or confrontation is bringing more of the sexual and sensual edge to it. even in a heated confrontation, and this requires more finesse. There is no formula. You have to feel the waves of the ocean like you're a surfer. What is called for in what moment? You have to feel into it. So it's not a rational thing, but it's a felt sense. But even in a heated argument, if you can find your center, you ground yourself, you're not afraid, you know that conflicts can be worked out, you know that she loves you, you know that you love her, and you guys are going to make it. It's just in this moment, it's heated. You can then have the confidence to even bring in that sexual edge and playfulness in the midst of a conflict or confrontation. This is where, the examples in erotic novels or romantic novels where there's scenes of the men who pin the woman against the wall or lean into her against the wall or lift her chin up with a dagger. This playful dangerousness that creates a lot of chemistry and polarity in that moment. And that's something you can inject into those situations as well. She's yelling, she's getting very agitated. You could even playfully, with a smile, right, pin her arms down, hold them. She might be struggling, and you wrap your legs around her. She keeps shaking and shaking. You're like, no, we're not going to do this. But I like your feistiness. It's hot. And that alone could shift her demeanor all of a sudden. And so you have the opportunity to bring that playfulness and the opportunity to work out the confrontation, which then perhaps leads to fantastic make-up sex. But all of these ways in which you can address conflict and confrontation shows that you're a man who's not afraid to show up. You're not overreacting, right, yelling or calling her names, and you're also not running. You're not fleeing. You're just staying right there. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not afraid. And that creates a lot of safety and relaxation in her nervous system. She feels she can then bring her feminine chaos and trust that you've got it and you'll handle it. When you can do this, right, you shift your patterns from a man who's afraid of conflict and confrontation with your woman to a man who is excited, you can't wait for the next conflict, next confrontation. That will change your relationship entirely. And you'll be doing it from a place not needing to please her or to behave, but you're just a man who's sure in himself. So those are the thoughts that I wanted to share. I would love to hear your feedback from men and from women. How is this landing with you? You can start a conversation down in the comments. Can't wait to see how you respond to this video. What are your thoughts? What are your comments or any questions? Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.